Hello, welcome to Super Return Asia. I'm Sarah Clark in Hong Kong. I'm joined by Melissa Guzy. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, you're the co-founder and managing partner of Arbor Ventures. It's a venture capital firm focused on partnering with entrepreneurs building tech companies in Asia. Let's look at a key area being cross-border investments. This region, is this the growth area for cross-border investments?
Well, obviously, given the size of China and also the Southeast Asia, you can't ignore it when it comes to cross-border. A lot of people over the years had looked at in venture capital between the US and Europe, or Israel and the US, but that's definitely changing. And now Asia has to come into the equation for all startups globally.
Has there been a shift in capital flow sources and destinations for cross-border investments?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one interesting corridor that's developed is actually between Israel and China. You know, people don't think about it, but there's a huge amount of technology transfer and investment going back and forth between Israel and Singapore and Israel and China. And I think that's only going to continue. I think the US to China has always been a very complicated relationship and continues to be complicated. You don't see any tech startups that are very successful in China and vice versa, but the capital flows are definitely there.
Okay, we mentioned China and Israel. Where are other growth markets for cross-border investments?
Southeast Asia. I mean, it's doing quite well. It's growing rapidly, and you're seeing more and more venture capital investment in the region, which is, you know, one of the reasons why we're actually opening an office in Singapore. I think it's, as you think about the future of Asia with 600 million people and an emerging middle class, we focus on financial services. And when you have 67% of the, of the group underbanked, it's an ideal place to see innovation in that area.
Other countries that are certainly showing growth or rising, increasing trends of more tech or luring more tech?
Sure. I mean, Indonesia, look what Alibaba and Ant and Tencent are doing down there. Thailand has been really a leader outside of China in QR code adoption. Singapore, I don't know if you saw the announcement, but they're trying to go cashless. Japan is trying to go cashless. So there's a lot of innovation in the region.
Okay. Venture capital investors better targeting cross-border to get stronger returns? A big one.
Yeah, stronger returns is an interesting question because over the years, historically, if you look at returns, they really have been dominated by the US. And then, of course, a little bit of Israel. And now China comes into play with more than 50% of the capital going into China. But, whether you're going to generate outsized returns, yeah, of course, people hope so, and that's why they're doing it. But I think it's actually a different dynamic. It's not only returns, it's actually that business models have changed and become far more global earlier in a company's life cycle, and their cross-border actually just follows that for investment. But sure, everybody's looking for outsized returns, and clearly China has provided some. I think Southeast Asia will provide it, but today many more firms are global than they were in the past.
Fintech startups, they're luring more investors. Are there greater rewards looking at the fintech sector?
Well, it's a sector within, venture capital. We like it. It's produced great returns for us. And I think it'll continue. Why? Because money is a fundamental part of the economy, and it's changing, and it's becoming more technology driven and more digital. And because the old establishment just can't seem to change. I mean, I spent 6 hours and 10,000 steps trying to open a bank account this past week and couldn't get it done. And so it's just a great example of why financial services is going to go more and more technology, and the incumbents are going to have to deal with it or startups are going to win.
Chinese investors driving global cross-border capital flows. Now one of the most important sources of global capital. Will this continue?
For a while, unless the government changes that, but it's definitely changed the dynamics of investing. They're in Southeast Asia, they're in Israel, they're in the US, they are global. And that means the world is now much more flooded with capital than it used to be, especially in certain stages of venture.
Okay, let's look at one of the bigger issues certainly dominating the political climate in this region, the China-US trade war. Rising trade tensions dragging down long-term kind of cross-border investments by companies around the world.
Yeah, I think Jack Ma said it perfectly, which is, are Chinese startups or technology companies going to be as impacted as the US? And the answer is probably no. They have domestic consumption. The US has always been pretty reliant upon, being more global in that sense. I think it will. I mean, personally, I see the impact, which is you can't buy US goods right now on the shelves in Hong Kong. And there's no more cottage cheese or US eggs. And you're like, wow, the trade war has actually trickled down already. I think from a technology perspective, it'll continue. It will have some impact, but not the impact necessarily that people may expect it to have.
And the impact, to say some of the countries across the region, is it having a flow-on effect in a number of countries, not just the likes of China and Hong Kong?
We haven't seen it yet. We have not seen the impact in Southeast Asia or Japan or Korea for that matter. So I can't speak to that. But clearly I think you're seeing it in China and Hong Kong.
And has it impacted on tech startups?
I think so. I think people are worried about capital flows. So, if you're a really good entrepreneur, you don't want your investor here for one round of financing. You want to make sure they're here for the long term. And I think it's starting to put some question in the mind of entrepreneurs is the capital going to be available in 2 or 3 years? And I do think it will impact some decisions that are going to be made by at least, really experienced entrepreneurs.
And potentially a deterrent for tech startups to operate in this region as a result?
I think a deterrent to operate in Hong Kong and China, but not a deterrent for other countries, not yet.
Okay. Last question, the outlook for the next 12 months. What are your thoughts?
Well, we're at one of the fastest paces of innovation we've ever seen. So despite some of the chaos that's in the world, I think the innovation will continue. I mean, AI is going to change our lives dramatically across so many sectors. That's not going to stop. Will valuations ebb and flow depending upon the public markets and the macro environment? Absolutely, but innovation won't stop, and therefore early stage investors like ourselves will absolutely continue to invest.
Melissa Guzy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us too, and if you'd like to see more conversations like this, go to Twitter and look for #SRAsia. Bye for now.